morning, everybody. Welcome to Musical Orbits webinar with the heavy brass, the London Philharmonic Orchestra. We have on your screens Lyndon Meredith, who is the principal bass trombone. Hi, Lyndon. We have Mark Templeton, who's principal trombone.
Hello.
Dave Whitehouse, who is his right-hand man, number 2. And Lisa Marklis, who is the principal tuba. Hi guys, thank you so much for coming along today and getting up so early on this hot sweaty day before some of you go off to play Carmen at Glyndebourne Opera in Sussex, which is very nice, taking a picnic with you I hope. We've got a few questions come in from keen brass players. Our very first one is quite a good one from Rosie, who says, do you all get on? Have you ever fallen out? And I think we should ask Lee that question first. What do you say to that, Lee?
We all get on very well.
Do you? Have you never fallen out?
Not really, no. We have a few, we've had a couple of, cabin fever moments where the schedule's been very busy and we've been working very hard, travelling, living in each other's shoes almost, which is part of where orchestra is. When the orchestra's very busy, we're all living together 24/7 really. So there's bound to be a couple of little spats, but nothing serious, no.
Great.
It's a bit like a marriage, really, because like Lee said, we're all together loads of the time. And when something comes up, if we have a disagreement or someone says something that someone takes the wrong way, you can either ignore it and let it fester for years and years and years and then end up not speaking to each other, or you can have a little bit of it kind of like, oi, come on, and which we sometimes do, and then it's sorted, and then we get on again. So it's just, it's just like being married, isn't it, lads?
Yes.
Yes, Mrs. Templeton. Yes, very good. And what about after the concerts? Socialising afterwards? Do you socialise as a section, or do you branch out, mix with the string players or anything like that?
Sometimes. It depends. If we're on tour, just often it'll be whoever's there. Sometimes also the ones with kids tend to use touring as a chance to catch up on some sleep, because you don't have to get up every morning sometimes, and you do get the occasional line. But as for socialising after every concert, if we did that after every concert, we would basically never be at home, because if you're doing 2 or 3, sometimes more concerts a week, then you'd never be at home, I think. So we do it occasionally with each other and occasionally with all sorts of people from the orchestra, basically. Yeah,
great. So we have a question here from another David, not you, I don't think. And it says, how does it feel to get a new principal? Do principal styles differ? And does it make a big difference? Or does the new principal try to fit in? So Lyndon, perhaps we could ask you your thoughts on that first.
Of course, yeah, I'd say every principal has their own way of playing and their own way of working. Some people are quite vocal, some people not so much. And it's the way of the section. So if Mark's away, usually if Mark's away, then Dave will play principal. We're very lucky to have someone in the section who can step up and play someone first. But on the other occasion where neither of them are there and we have to work for a different principal, we basically, it's just seeing who comes in, how they want to work, and we'll usually go with the principal. That's just usually how it works. As for sort of picking a new principal, the best person to speak to about this is Lee, really, because he put our principal in place. If none of us were there before, Lee was the inaugural sort of member of the section. He kind of put this section together. So he could probably give you a bit more on that one.
What do you think, Lee? How was it? So you were there with no trombones next to you.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we had a very good section when I joined the orchestra, and one by one they sort of retired or left. And then the first thing to do really is appointing a principal, and then he can sort out his own section. So it's a very important appointment. We're very lucky to appoint Mark. And now Mark works in a different way than what the old principal used to work. So, it's just a case of being adaptable to what the new guy wants, and we all go with that, really.
Yeah.
Like in
Sorry. Mark, it's also the case that, I mean, with what happened with the LPO section, when basically everybody left and there was essentially a blank canvas for the new principal to appoint the new people. If it's just a change of principal in the section, which Hasn't happened to this section for a while. Then the new principal will often be chosen anyway after an extensive trial, and they will, by then, will be fitting in anyway. They'll be either will have adjusted what they're doing to what the principal trumpet's doing, or they will be just compromising and sort of basically fitting in with what's already there. So that you don't tend to appoint new principals that are going to come along and completely change the way the brass section plays, because you're going to try and get something that's going to fit in.
Yeah,
I think that's because I mean the system that we have in England is different to the European and the American way of doing things, where someone wins an audition and then gets thrown into the job, and then everyone meets and gets to know what they're like. When I was playing with the LPO, sort of like Lyndon and Dave saying, you listen and see how it's going, and I listen to how the Paul Benison, the principal trumpet, played, and listen to how Lee played, and we make sure that everyone's kind of singing from the same hymn sheet, and then if the LPO were kind of happy with what I did, and so and I seemed to get on with everyone. And so so I mean we recently appointed two new principal horns recently in the last 4 or 5 years with John Ryan and Dave Pyatt, and they've come in from a very different orchestra, and as an orchestra sort of fitting in, they've come in and they've played with us, and also socially fitted in as well, because we all get on with the horns. That was another question about the horns, wasn't it, that someone sent in. But yeah, it's all just getting used to each other. So as far as new principals goes, everyone just kind of tries to see how everyone works.
We got a question from Katie, who says that she's had a few trials and she's had people say to her, please can she change her style of playing to fit into the orchestra. Mark, what do you say to that?
Well, I'd say Lyndon shook his head. I'll try not to preempt what Lyndon's going to say. I think it depends. I mean, you've got to be within the right sort of bounds. For instance, if you've got an orchestra that plays everything kind of sort of very gently and very well, not aggressively, then if you go in and play everything really hard and aggressive, then you're not going to win the job. But do you want to change how you play just to get a job? If you're going to be in a job and playing in a manner that you don't want for years and years and years, then that could be worse. It depends what stage of the career that she's at. I mean, if she's after a principal job and what she does is liked by lots of other people but not liked by one particular place, then she should stick to her guns. Whereas if she's constantly hearing the same thing, it might be worth listening to the advice of people around her and find out what specifically she might be able to change. And if she's happy to change that to fit in, then it's by baby steps, doing it gradually and seeing what works.
Yeah. Rashid asks, who is your favourite conductor to work with?
It's about when conductors draw you in rather than keeping you out there, and they invite you to make music with them, and they don't kind of stamp on what you're trying to do musically. There are conductors that are clearer than others, and sometimes clarity in a conductor is useful if what they do is good, and sometimes a bit of lack of clarity is also quite good if what their musical ideas are good.
Yeah. David, how do you feel about different conductors?
Well, I agree. Yannick is certainly up there. One of the newest conductors we've had come to the orchestra is actually our ex-principal flute, Jaime Martin, and I really liked what he did. He just seems to, he knows the music from the inside out, and he seems to be able to tell you what he wants with his hands without having to stop rehearsals and explain things. And that's something that, I mean, Yannick can do that as well, and there aren't many around who can do that, and a lot of rehearsal time gets wasted by conductors stopping basically and just explaining something that they really ought to be able to show with their hands.
Yeah.
But no, I like Jaime a lot. It's been interesting to see. I hope his career, I mean, it's starting to take off, and I hope it really, and I'm sure it will before too long. He's going to be everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Lee, who's your favourite?
My favourite that I've worked with in the orchestra has been Heiting, who came in when I first joined the orchestra. He used to do maybe 4 or 5 concerts a year with us, and we did certainly all the Mahler symphonies, Bruckner symphonies with him, were just sensational.
As brass players, I often see you getting a lot of this. the conductor, with them saying, you know, back off. That must be really hard to take. Is it?
It can be. I mean, something as simple as body language really makes a difference. Any conductor that does this, you probably see what I'm doing. With this sort of arms outstretched and let's do this together makes a huge difference, whereas that doesn't really get the best money from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think sorry, to add to that volume thing, I think a lot of it as well. There are some conductors that decide how they're going to tell us how to play, and decide that we're too loud before we've even played a note. And there's the kind of conspiracy theory that they've already got it marked on their score. Tell the trombones to play quiet.
We've got Rashid again, who asked about the conductors, also asks, what's your favourite repertoire to play? And I have to say, I'm not a trombonist, as you well know, but I do love which Brahms symphony is at the end with the massive chorale bit? Brahms 4? Brahms 1?
Well, there's 1, 2, and 4.
1, 2, and 4. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
They've all got nice chorale bits.
They're just brilliant. They're lovely. But as for actually playing them, what's your favourite piece? Lee, let's start with you. I
think Mahler 2 is my favourite. Mahler 2, and there's a beautiful chorale with trombones and contrabassoon, I think, as well. In it's a very special moment. That's probably my all-time favourite piece of section playing.
Yeah. And David, what about you?
I'd agree with the Mahler 2 thing actually, but if it's not Mahler 2, then anything by Shostakovich or Stravinsky. Yeah. And also some of the Tchaikovsky symphonies, actually. I mean, I know we play them a lot, but it's actually quite fun to play. Yeah. And
they've got some rude words to go with them as well, haven't they? Which helps.
Not that I know. No.
Really? Yeah.
I don't know any rude words to any Tchaikovsky symphonies.
And Lyndon, for bass trombone, what's the best in the repertoire?
I think Tchaikovsky is a great call. He just has this way of writing for bass trombone. Or something like Brahms, where we get to play as a section, we get to play these chorales. I mean, growing up in brass bands, that's what I used to love. I used to play hymn tunes and that sort of thing, listening to each other. That's what I really enjoy doing. So something like Bruckner or Brahms for that. But for pure fun, I'd say Tchaikovsky. Yeah.
And Mark, as a principal trombone, what's your moment of glory?
Yeah, I mean, Mahler 2's well up there. I think. We get our jollies from doing various things, from playing tunes and playing really loud, but the things that really make me tingle are the lovely chorales. I mean, for instance, the beautiful chorale that Lee starts off with, the viola tubas in Book 7.
7, yeah.
Yes.
Even though we have very little to do in that movement. Well, yeah, we play some nice chords, you know. But it's not really a feature for trombones. We're just taking part in that. I'm just thinking about it now. All my hairs.
Well, you haven't got any.
And a good Shostakovich symphony. It's just nice to mix it up. It's the beauty of, I think, and actually some with our schedule being so varied with doing opera. You know, I'm really looking forward to doing the Ravel double bill this year with L'Or Espagnol and L'Enfant Sauterelle. Because that's got some cheeky little bits for us to do, and also the first time that we will have played with Lee for ages.
We got a question from Rosie, who says regarding opera, which of course the London Philharmonic Orchestra is resident at Glyndebourne, which is a beautiful place down in Sussex. She asks, how do you decide who gets to play the offstage parts? Now, I expect most people watching this are brass players, but those who aren't, it's rather good to do an offstage part because you get to just play for a little bit and sit and enjoy the opera the rest of the time, don't you? So is it a perk, or would you rather be in the pit?
I think we try and kind of share it around as much as possible, really. I mean, if people have had a heavy year one year, you know, it's nice to lighten the load next year. Or, I mean, a few years ago, I had some light duties because my daughter was being born, so it was going to be easier if she was born right in the middle of the run, which she was. It'd be much easier to get someone to depth a small little section rather than a big long section.
Are we talking about Meistersingers here?
Is there also Meistersingers? I've never played it, so.
Well, there is. What was it? Explain what exactly you did for Meistersingers, which is also coming up next year, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Can you just explain the range of notes you had to play and the frequency?
Yeah, it's a very specialised art playing the spear horn. It's not a very well-known instrument. Pitched in F sharp, and basically it plays an F sharp 6 times in Act 2, Scene 5 and Scene 7. And it's a pivotal role, you know, for the opera. I think you'd all agree, lads. So there's a lot of pressure involved, and I was happy to take that for the team.
Yeah.
You're a good man. Mind you, it would be noticed, actually. I do know the bit you're talking about now. It would be noticed if you did sort of fall asleep, forget to come in, go to the pub. Oh, yes, God forbid, absolutely. I'm sure you never go, Mark. Marvellous. Okay, so Rosie also asks, do you get bored having to sit around and wait to play? Sort of string players never stop and we moan about it, but you have a lot of sitting around sometimes, don't you? What do you do to fill that time? Remember, you're live on the
in concerts, I mean, the honest answer is yes, a little bit, depending on how long you have to wait. Also, with pieces that you've done a lot before, then you know how they go, and it's going to basically be quite similar to the last time you heard it. So if you're doing a run of Brahms ones and you're feeling a little bit tired, it is quite difficult not to just sort of rest your eyes a little bit. But in rehearsals, there are things you can do so long as you're discreet. You can, you know, read a book behind a music stand or whatever. And yeah, but in concerts, but at least in a concert, you know you're only going to do it once, and you know you've got to wait half an hour before your entry or something. And yeah.
And of course, many great brass players have gone on to become conductors. I think, personally, possibly because they've got so much time to sit and watch and work out what's working, what's not working. I think don't you think that more brass players end up becoming conductors than string players, for instance?
I don't know. Who are you thinking of? Tim Brabbins, for example?
Well, Andrews Nelson, this was second
time. Oh, was it?
Apparently. Used to sort of,
didn't know that.
Apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's such good fun, isn't he? I can imagine he was quite destructive as a second trumpet. Probably far too much going on in his brain. Daniel Harding.
Yeah, Andy Gorley.
Oh yeah.
See? We do spend a lot of time watching the conductors. I spend a lot of time watching the conductors and seeing how they're doing it. I mean, a nice one to watch is Enrique Mazzola, who's doing Donizetti Poliuto at the moment, because his gestures are so lovely. I mean, I sometimes get a little bored during concerts, but I do try to occupy my brain by listening to pieces. It's funny, Dave mentions Brahms 1. I mean, I think every time I listen to Brahms 1 and do Brahms 1, I try to hear something that I've not heard before. Because some pieces are so well written. If something's really beautiful, you don't mind listening to it lots. If it's not very good, you don't really want to. So then I do switch off.
We've got David here asking, have you ever fallen out with a conductor? Now, this obviously, please don't mention names, as we don't want to get anybody to come here. But do you have any good anecdotes of difficult conductors, or were you being difficult, maybe?
You tend to just bite your lip and get on with it, really, because you tend not to answer back to conductors because there's no point. Because if the conductor's behaving appallingly, then you've generally got the support of your colleagues. If a conductor's having a go at you, then you know that your colleagues are thinking, well, actually, this conductor's being a bit difficult here. Poor guys, I hope they're okay. So you tend not to have to act.
Yeah. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah. I think most conductors know that it's in their best interests not to get up the backs of musicians, because it's a team thing. We're all doing it together. And if you start upsetting people, they're not going to do what you want them to do. You're not going to get the product that you want from the orchestra. So it's just not in their interests, really. So they're always saying things that we don't agree with, but then you're never going to get everyone in a symphony orchestra to agree how a piece should go, you know.
Yeah, I think it used to happen a lot more a while ago, didn't it? Sort of 30, 40 years.
I think so. Yeah, I think you just have to remember, at the end of the day, you know, he's the boss, and that's that. And you just have to go along with it, whether you agree with it or not. You know.
Yeah. I think these days as well, you know, I agree with what Linda said. These days, it's kind of, it's not worth having a fight, you know, because at the end of the day, you're just going to get excited and upset, and it won't end well. I mean, a few years ago, maybe I might have been guilty of occasionally having a little spat with the conductor. It's all about professional pride. If they're trying to make us do something that we really, really don't want to do, then you can either argue against it, or you can go, yeah, and kind of go a little bit closer to what they want, but still play what you want. There's a good 3 words: smile and nod. Dave Whitehouse tells me that a few times. He whispers that in my ear. And goes, smile and nod, and I go.
I think also, Nicole, years ago, a conductor was associated with a recording company. So a recording company would make an album with an orchestra, and you would get their conductor that they wanted. So the orchestras weren't really linked with the conductors that much. So you know, if they were rude, you could afford to be a bit rude back. But nowadays you can't really. The conductors and orchestras are far too linked. They've got a very close relationship.
Yeah. So we're going to be running out of time in a minute, but just a last rather great question actually from Andrew, who's asking, do you have much contact with the horns, the French horns, if they're over the other side of the stage? And of course, often you have French horns, timpani, and then the trombones and trumpets on the other side. He says, do you prefer it if they're over there? Now, again, not talking about personal people here, gentlemen, but just generally, does that feel strange having half the brass section so far away?
Lee, talk about the problems with Bruckner.
Yeah, I mean, like in Bruckner 7 that Mark mentioned earlier on, the tuba plays with the horns, and the Wagner tuba is more than it does with the trombones. So, personally, I would prefer if we were all together. But then at the same time, if you've got horns sitting in front of trombones, the trombones are blown into the horn players are blown back into trombone players, which is not a great experience. Nothing to do with playing, they're all great players. Yeah. So we come to an arrangement where I sit in the middle and I've got trombones to my left, horns on my right. But some orchestras, the tuba player walks right over to the other side of the stage and sits with the horns for the chorale bits, and then walks back again during the concert. It's a bit messy. Personally, I quite like the horns being nearby because they're such great players. You can hear them all. It's great. Safety numbers. There's more of us.
I think I really like being able to hear the horns. I know we're separated by timps, but it's really nice to actually be able to hear what they're doing. And sometimes with the distance thing, I don't know how much of the horns that Lyndon and Lee can hear when we're normally going for it, but I can just about hear enough to latch on, and hopefully I can kind of, the guys know that I'm listening to that, and so when we all play together, we sound together.
Is there a time delay with the sound bouncing off the wall behind them and then getting to you? How does that work?
Slightly, but you get used to, a bit like at our home is the Royal Festival Hall. And so that's the place that we're most used to playing. And so you get used to how much you can hear of each person in that setting. Occasionally the orchestras move around a bit, which makes it a bit more difficult because then it offsets everything that you're used to, But I think in the main, we just get used to what we can hear from each place.
And it's also the way that it's been set up for years, and the way we've been doing it since youth orchestra. The horns have been over there, trombones here, trumpets there. And it's just the way we've basically been doing it for the last 30 years or so. Well, me, 30 years, Yeah. I know you're not all as old as me.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me this morning. It's been great talking to you. I'll let you go now, as you all have to make journeys down to Sussex to do Carmen tonight. But if you'd like to hear any of these guys playing with the wonderful London Philharmonic Orchestra, you can either go for a picnic in Glyndebourne, or you can go to the Royal Festival Hall, or go to their website, which is lpo.org.uk.
Yeah. Org.uk.
Yeah. Starting the season with Marla 7. After doing Marla 2 in Mexico.
Mexico, great.
Good start to the season. Good start to the season. Come on.
And if any of you would like a lesson with any of these guys online or on location, if they're coming near you with the orchestra, or you'd like to come to their homes in London, do let us know. Come and visit us at musicalorbit.com. Thanks very much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Our little friends are flying through the galaxy. Come on and join us on a science fantasy. You'll catch them swinging, whistling and singing, and they'll be bringing booms and sings, zaps and dings on unexpected journeys.